Welcome back to this week's Parsha Show. This week's Parsha Show, as always, is brought to you in conjunction with the Weiss Entertainment number 613 on your dial. This week is Parshat Vayeshev. Parshat Vayeshev begins a new chapter in Yaakov's life and is really mostly about Yosef and his brothers. As Yaakov is now returned home and is living in Hebron, Rashi tells us that actually the Baal HaTurim points out that it says that Yaakov lives be'eretz migurei aviv. Eretz migurei aviv, he says, be'gamatri is Hebron. Yaakov was now living in Hebron, the city where all the Avot lived in, and he was ready to kind of relax the rest of his life. But obviously that was not meant to be. Rashi also points that out, that tzaddikim get rewards in the next world. So what happens? So he comes back and he has his children, and it says that Yosef was ben Sheva Esrei Shana. And there are a number of things that Yosef was 17 years old, and it says that he was Roeh Imechav, that he was a shepherd with his brothers, V'hu nar im bnei Bilha u'bnei Zilpa. He was particularly friendly with bnei Bilha and bnei Zilpa. So Rashi already picks up on the different usages of the different words. Number one, why does it call him a nar? That he's a young boy, because he was 17 years old. He really wasn't a young boy. So Rashi tells us that he was a Mesakim B'saro, Mashbesh Be'enav Kadesh Yira Nira Yafa. That Shaya Osa Maisa Naros, that he had the actions of an immature kid. He was always worried about his hair. He'd always concerned how his eyes looked. It was something that was a preoccupation that Yosef had, and that presented him in an immature way. So the pasuk calls him a nar to represent that idea. The second thing is, why does it say he's friendly, particular with Bilhah and Zilpah? So Rashi says that Lefisha Achim Evazin also V'humakaran. He says that the brothers used to poke fun at Bnei Bilhah and Bnei Zilpah and say that they're sons of slaves, and Yosef would bring them in closer. Then the Torah tells us that he would bring to Yaakov the Batam Ra'ah. He would speak about the brothers in a negative way. So Rashi says that anything that he perceived as bad, he would tell his brothers. And there were three things particularly, and we'll see later that he was punished for all three. Number one, She'ochlim Eber Menachai. So you weren't allowed to eat a limb that fell off of a live animal. Say a leg fell off of an animal. You can't then cook that and eat it. Mezalzelim b'bnei shvachos likrosam avadim, and again he would tell them that the sons of Leah would make fun of the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah and call them slaves. V'chashudim al harayos, and he said that the brothers were not very moral people, and they were suspect of many different bad acts, and we'll see later that a lot of these things come back to haunt Yosef. So those are some of the things that Yosef said about his brothers. Then he has two dreams, and the message of both of these dreams is that Yosef was going to be the king. So in the first dream, we see the bundles, that there were 11 bundles gathered in a circle, and Yosef was in the middle, and they all bowed down to Yosef. So when Yosef told that dream, so that really infuriated his brothers, and they became very jealous of him. The second dream was Shemesh Yareach V'Kochavim, as you see in the picture. There was the sun, the moon, and the stars. The sun and the moon represented Yaakov and Rachel, and the 11 stars represented the brothers, and they all were bowing down to Yosef. So it's interesting that Yaakov tried to diffuse the tension by saying, look, he had a dream of Rachel, and Rachel is dead. Rachel can't be bowing down to Yosef. So just as that's not true, so the rest of the dream is not true. That was an attempt of Yaakov to diffuse the situation a little bit. We're going to see later, next week's parsha, the Ramban says that the fulfillment of Yosef's dream was an important part of the whole story of Bnei Israel coming to Mitzrayim and going down to Mitzrayim. In one of the strangest stories in the Chumash, based on what had taken place previously, and we just discussed Yaakov understanding the dynamics between Yosef and his brothers, The Torah tells us a story how the brothers had gone away to take care of the sheep. What happened after that? They went to Shechem. And Yaakov decides to send Yosef to Shechem to find out how the brothers were doing. And it's not understandable because Yaakov knew they hated him and they knew that nothing good was going to come out of that. But here's where the story to me takes off. It says Yosef pagash et hamalach Gavriel. The angel Gavriel, Yosef meets in Shechem. The brothers aren't there, but the malach is there. So the malach indicates that Hashem was pushing the story, that Yosef had to go to Mitzrayim so we could get to Mitzrayim. And the malach tells Yosef where his brothers are, and they're in a place, as we see here, Bedotan, in a place called Dotan. When Yosef is coming close, they look ahead and they see him coming up the road, and right away Shimon, Rashi brings down, declares, here comes the dreamer. And they want to kill him and they want to do all kinds of bad things to him. Ruvain jumps up and says, no, why should we kill him? Why should we be? Let's throw him into a pit. And you see here, you see he has a colored jacket on, the Ketonis Pasim that Yaakov had made for him. And you see the brothers taking it off him. And eventually they threw him in the pit and they dipped. And later on they'll dip the coat in blood. But before that happens, what happens? As they're sitting and they're eating. So Ruvain goes away. So Rashi quotes the Medrash that they would take turns in going back to Yaakov to make sure that Yaakov's needs were taken care of. Ruvain comes, and before Ruvain comes back, a group of Ishmaelim who were particularly spice merchants. The spice merchants come by and they are on their way to Mitzrayim. Yehuda steps up and says, why should we let our brother die in the pit? Just an interesting note about the pit. The pasuk says about the pit, Habor Reik Ein Bo Mayim. The pit had no water in it, and it was empty. So Rashi asked the question, according to the Gemara in Shabbos, that what does it mean? It was empty, but had no and had no water. So Gemara Rashi, quoting from the Gemara in Shabbos, says it meant it was empty with no water, but it had snakes and scorpions in it. So it was a dangerous place. The spice merchants passed by, and Yehuda says, "Why should we let our brother die in a pit? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelim." And everyone agrees to it, and they sell Yosef to the Ishmaelim. It says, "Yehuda Amar Lim Koroso Ishmaelim." Yehuda says, "Sell them to the Ishmaelim." So we see here them taking off the coat. Now that they sold them, so what are they gonna do with Yaakov? So they take the coat off, they dip it in goat's blood. Rashi says that the goat's blood looks very similar to human blood. So when they dipped the coat in the goat's blood, it looked like human blood. And they bring it back to Yaakov, and Yaakov declares Toraf Yosef, that Yosef was killed by some kind of a wild animal. What's interesting is that Yaakov mourns for Yosef 22 years, which is the same 22 years that he was away from his father, and it says he never stops mourning. Rashi brings down a very important life lesson. In life, we're not meant to be constantly in a state of mourning. So how come Yaakov never stopped mourning? And the answer is that Rashi tells us a very important lesson in life, that when someone dies, our hearts are set up that we're going to mourn a certain amount of time, and then we kind of move on and we go on with our lives. But Yaakov never stopped crying because Yosef wasn't dead, and there was always the potential that they're going to reunite. Even though he didn't know that openly, it was only a subconscious thing. But that's what took place. Yaakov constantly mourned Yosef until later on when they come back. Yosef is sold to Mitzrayim. Rashi brings down that he was sold a number of times. He was sold to the Midyanim, the Ishmaelim, the Midyanim, and then eventually to Potiphar. So it says Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim. That means he was brought to Mitzrayim. And the Ishmaelim eventually sell him to Potiphar. Potiphar was some kind of officer to Paro. Now, it says that Potiphar made Yosef the head of his house. And everything in the house ran through Yosef. Why did that happen? Because he saw him as an Ish Matzliach. And actually, the pasuk says that he saw that Hashem was with Yosef. So Rashi asked the question, how did he see that Hashem was with Yosef? So Rashi says the famous line, Shem Hashem Shagur B'fiv, that Yosef constantly thanked Hashem. Yosef constantly talked about Hashem. Hashem's name was constantly on his mouth. And Potiphar said Hashem has made Yosef successful. So he made him in charge of the house. So we see in the picture Maisa Eshet Potiphar, the story of Yosef and Potiphar's wife. So Potiphar's wife, Yosef was very handsome, and Potiphar's wife wanted to be with Yosef. And she tried a number of times, and Yosef absolutely refused. Yosef tells Potiphar's wife for two reasons, I cannot be with you. Number one, it's a sin to Hashem, and number one, it's a break of trust that my master Potiphar has set up with me by putting me in charge of the house. Anyway, eventually she tries to grab him, and she grabs him by the coat. He throws off his coat and he leaves. So when Potiphar comes home, she has to explain why she has Yosef's coat. It makes up a story how he tried to attack her, and here's his coat, and eventually that causes Potiphar, as you see right here, Samoto b'beit hasoah. Potiphar puts Yosef in jail. Once again, in jail, he becomes tremendously successful. He is the head of the jail. At some point later, Paro puts two people in jail: the Sarah Mashkim, his cupbearer, his winemaker, and the Sarah Ophim, chamberlain, a fancy word for winemaker, the Sarah Ophim, and the baker. Rashi says that the Sarah Mashkim's sin was that when he gave the cup to Paro, that in the cup a fly flew in, and Paro saw a fly in the cup and got angry at him and put him in jail. Sarah Ophim's sin was that in baking his cakes, one time they found a rock inside the dough or inside the cake, and then that caused Paro to put him in jail. Anyway, one night they both have a dream, and they also dream the interpretation, but they can't remember the interpretation. Or actually, Rashi points out is they dreamed the other person's interpretation, and they couldn't remember it until Yosef says it. So here's what happens. So the dream was so Yosef finds them very sad, and because they're very sad, he asks them what's going on. So they tell him his dream. The Sarah Mashkim's dream was that he saw himself squeezing grapes into a cup and giving the cup to Paro. The Sarah Ophim's dream was he has three baskets on his head with baked goods in it, and a bird is eating out the baked goods. So Yosef tells them what's going to happen. Yosef interprets their dream. He tells the Sarah Mashkim, the fly flew into your cup. What are you going to do? Not your fault. In 3 days, you're going to be returned back to your job. And Pharaoh's going to put you back into your position. He also tells the Sarah Mashkim that talk to Paro about Yosef and tell him how he got stuck in jail. He's innocent and doesn't deserve to be here, and the Paro should take him out of jail. So we'll see later that Yosef got punished for that. The Sarah Ophim, who was responsible for his sin, Yosef tells him in 3 days you're going to get hanged, and you're going to die. Now the parsha ends with the words Lo Zachar Sarah Mashkim es Yosef vayishkacheo. The Sarah Mashkim does not remember Yosef. Rashi brings down that because he asked the Sarah Mashkim to get him out of jail, it was almost like he pushed away his trust in Hashem, so he got stuck in jail for 2 more years, and that was his punishment for asking the Sarah Mashkim to help him and not going directly and davening to Hashem to get him out of jail. That's the story on this week's Parsha. Mr. Hashem, we'll talk next week. Parsha Miketz. It's also the week of Hanukkah, and we'll hear more about what happens to Yosef in his adventures in Mitzrayim.